Hello, I am Sangeeta Dhavla and I am going to take you through the nature and types of addiction. You must have heard people say, I have missed my daily serial. How I wish I had access to the television. How I wish someone had recorded an episode for me. A few other people practically spend 24 hours on the social networking sites, for instance, Facebook. Every 10 seconds, he or she will peep into the page to find out if there are any new updates. They are obsessed with peeping into the lives of others and are curious to know more about what they have been up to. The behavior of these people in the two instances suggests that they are addicted to the television or the Facebook like mad. Though these addictions are relatively new and can prove to be having a negative impact on the lives of the individuals who engage in it, there are more serious addictions that mar the lives of the individuals to the extent that they become almost irreparable. We are going to learn about the nature and different types of addictions that have been prevalent since a long time, and scores of people have succumbed to the pressures of these life-taking addictions. They not only have a debilitating effect on the mental, physical and the social spheres of life of the addict, but also push him into such a state that coming back becomes really a Herculean task. But before we get down to learning what the different types of addiction are, we will first understand what addiction actually means. Now, what is addiction? Addiction is a compulsive dependence of an individual on a particular substance or on a particular behavior. The individual shows compulsive behavior and engages in the same activity regardless of whether the addiction is for alcohol, cocaine, marijuana, heroin, nicotine, and it could also be addiction to gambling, computer games, sex, sports, exercise and shopping. Why do you think people get addicted to these things? The answer is again very simple. It gives them the high, or what you can call the kick, and it is for this simple reason they engage repeatedly in the activity. People take to addiction because each and every addictive substance gives a pleasant state to the user and relieves his distress. A continued long-term usage of the addictive substance brings about adaptive changes in the brain, and this leads to dependence, tolerance and a craving that becomes uncontrollable and very frequently ends up in relapse. So, now comes the point, how much is too much and when can you really call it an addiction? When the person no longer has conscious control over the particular task or usage of a particular substance, and the thought of coming out of the habit puts him in a state of anxiety and tension, we can tell that the person has got addicted to a particular action or to a particular substance. When it becomes all-consuming and absolutely difficult to stop and get away with it, we will know that he has crossed the normalcy line. Is addiction a disease? What do you think? Yes, it is like a disease which is caused out of bad lifestyle choices and also partly because of the genetic factor. And it so very frequently happens that when a person gets addicted to one substance, he gets addicted to another substance also very easily. For instance, you must have come across people who are addicted to alcohol as well as nicotine. Ask them to give up any one of these and you can just imagine what their response will be. They would have become so dependent on the two that they cannot imagine their life without either of these. This condition may be referred to as cross addiction. We will now look into different types of addiction. As a layman, you may think that addiction is all about substance abuse and alcohol, but there is more to it than just these two. We can identify two major categories of addiction and they are drug addiction and behavior addiction. What is drug addiction? Drug addiction is where the person cannot refrain from using the sedatives, stimulants or the amphetamines despite having experienced negative consequences of using them. What is behavior addiction? Behavior addiction is where the person cannot control or restrain from a specific activity despite having experienced negative consequences of engaging in the activity. We will now take a detailed look into the different types of drug addiction. It is a condition that is characterized by an overwhelming desire to continue taking a drug to which one has become habituated through repeated consumption because it produces a particular effect, usually an alteration of the mental status. Commonly abused drugs are marijuana, cocaine, heroin and nicotine. Another type of addiction is alcohol addiction. This is by far the most common type of addiction, which is characterized by uncontrolled and compulsive consumption of alcohol regardless of the kind of negative effects that it brings on the individual's life. It is a habitual intoxication which is a result of a prolonged as well as excessive intake of alcohol. Now, you ask these people to give up on this habit and deprive them from the drink, their life will go haywire till they get a sip of the drink. Slowly, they will fall prey to various withdrawal symptoms like having headaches and becoming irritated at the drop of a cap. Yet another highly prevalent addiction is nicotine addiction. How many people have we heard and seen that they are chain smokers? Many, I guess. Though not just in the form of cigarettes, nicotine is taken in other forms as well. This powerful stimulant acts very quickly on the brain and the central nervous system, and due to this stress relief that it brings about, people take to more and more cigarette smoking because they are most easily available. Marijuana addiction is another type of addiction that people fall prey to because of the price at which it is available and also the high that it gives to the user. The stems, the flowers and the dried leaves of the plant marijuana are rolled into a paper in the form of a cigarette and are smoked. Steroid addiction is a common sight in bodybuilding and athlete circles, found to be highly used by these people in order to enhance their performance during the actual session. This habitual usage makes them so dependent that they cannot feel better without taking a dose of the steroids. Probably caffeine addiction is one type which witnesses a vast population of addicts when compared to other type of addictions. Caffeine is found in coffee, tea, chocolate and soft drinks. Majority of the population begin their day by consuming caffeine in the form of coffee. They reach such an extent that they cannot focus on important matters if they do not drink a hot cup of coffee. We have so far seen different types of drug addiction in the form of drug addiction, alcohol addiction, nicotine addiction, marijuana addiction, steroid addiction and caffeine addiction. Now, we will shift our focus to the different types of behavior addiction. Behavior addiction is different from drug addiction in the sense that it does not bring about any mind altering states to the individual, but he cannot control himself from performing the specific act. He is well aware of the negative consequences after engaging in the activity, but he will not be able to stop himself from engaging in the activity. One of the most common types of behavioral addiction is compulsive gambling. Gambling has been existing since the times of Mahabharata, and Yudhishthir losing his kingdom and wife Draupadi in gambling is of course a world famous story. Also known as pathological gambling, it is a serious psychological addictive disorder that is characterized by an inability to resist the impulse to gamble, and the impulse is always progressive, and that is the main reason why people get into a lot of difficulties on the personal, social and work fronts. Yes, they end up becoming penniless as they have lost everything in gambling. The casinos are a huge draw to the people in the US, and with the vast changes and development that the technological world has brought about, gambling has become more rampant through the online casinos. So, whether it is the physical casino or the online casino, the compulsive gambler loses control over the amount he risks, and he cannot stop himself from gambling even though he loses continuously round after round. These compulsive gamblers get into a euphoric state, which is comparable to the highs that the drug users get through consuming drugs. Another type of behavioral addiction is sex addiction, where the individual has a great struggle in managing his sexual behavior. The person is repeatedly attempting to get out of the physical or emotional discomfort by using sexualized behaviors like engaging in masturbation or engaging in obsessive thoughts related to sex. Some people go to the extent of engage in voyeurism or exhibitionism, or even engage in cyber sex. Close on heels to this kind of addiction is porn addiction, which is also characterized by viewing and compulsive reading of porn and sex related stuff. They also spend a lot of time watching porn stuff and cannot come out of this habit even after umpteen number of trials. Another type of addiction, an interesting addiction, is the food addiction. Also known as compulsive overeating, food addiction is mainly characterized by obsessive thoughts related to food. Also known as compulsive overeating, food addiction is mainly characterized by obsessive thoughts related to food and also compulsive behavior to consume food. The person eats uncontrollably to the extent that he is above the level of being comfortably full. When not stopped at the right time, it may lead to serious health complications and difficult medical conditions too. Many of us may be suffering from this kind of addiction. Yes, I am trying to draw your attention towards work addiction. You may call it addiction when your thoughts are always centered around your work, even when you are away from your work. Popular as workaholics, these addicts do not listen even if they are warned to stop working so rigorously. There are many instances that couples have separated because of the strain that is caused due to this kind of an obsession with work. Now comes another interesting type of addiction that we frequently hear of, and it is called exercise addiction. Our Bollywood heroines are a perfect example of this addiction. They are the ones who have made the size 0 a fad. The trend has now shifted to having a more curvaceous figure than a skinny figure. Each one of them has a rigorous exercise regimen chalked out, and they feel as if they have committed a sin if they do not take part in the day's schedule. Now, take a look at this picture. A look at the before and the after exercise will give you an idea as to what exercise addiction can do to a person. Shopping addiction. Interesting, isn't it? Yes, this also is a form of behavioral addiction because these people cannot stay without shopping for some stuff or the other. And the most surprising factor is that shopping acts as a main stress buster for these people. Like many other addictions, relationships are strained and finances suffer because the person cannot have a control over the way he spends the money. Computer games addiction. This is another type of behavioral addiction where teenagers and children make up the major bulk. And this has become a serious cause of concern for majority of the parents because they are finding it extremely difficult to take their children away from their monitors. Their behaviors go to the extent of becoming harmful, and many a times they experience great distress in other spheres of lives too. We have covered many types of drug addiction and behavior addiction. Can you think of any other addictions? Yes, the cell phone addiction, the gadget addiction. We can go on and identify many such addictions because the individual goes to the extent that he cannot refrain himself from engaging in that particular activity.